You're standing in Nishapur, April 1221. The city has just fallen to the Mongol army. 1.7 million people lived here 3 days ago. Now the streets run with blood so deep it pools in the foundations of mosques. But the killing has stopped. The Mongol soldiers aren't executing anymore. They're selecting. Women are being pulled from the rubble, not randomly, systematically. Guards check their hands for softness, their clothing for quality, their speech for education. Persian noblewomen, daughters of governors, wives of scholars, women who could read, write, speak multiple languages. They're being separated into groups, loaded onto carts, branded with marks indicating their origin city. And then something that won't make sense for another 20 years. They're being relocated, deliberately, thousands of miles from their homes. You think you know what happened next. You think this is another story of wartime sexual violence. You're wrong. What the Mongols did to captured Persian noblewomen wasn't about immediate gratification. It was about something far more calculated, far more sophisticated, and far more disturbing than simple conquest. It was about genetic engineering, multi-generational population control, the deliberate creation of a new administrative class bred specifically to serve the empire. This wasn't rape as chaos. This was rape as policy, systematic, documented, designed to continue for decades. And the archaeological evidence from mass graves, from DNA analysis, from children's bones showing deliberate malnutrition patterns, proves it worked exactly as planned. If you want history that refuses to look away from how empires actually functioned, subscribe. This channel exists to expose the mechanisms of domination that shaped civilizations through systematic horror. Let me show you what the Mongols built in Persia between 1220 and 1260, a machine that turned a captured noblewomen into the foundation of an empire. February 1221. Nishapur is one of the greatest cities in the Islamic world. Population over 1 million, libraries containing thousands of manuscripts, centers of mathematics, astronomy, poetry. The city where Omar Khayyam once studied. Then Genghis Khan's son-in-law Tokchar is killed during the siege by an arrow from Nishapur's walls. The Mongol response is immediate and total. When the city falls in April, Genghis Khan's daughter Tarikin personally oversees the aftermath, and here's what history books gloss over: the systematic categorization of survivors. Mongol military records preserved in Persian chronicles and Chinese administrative documents describe an organized sorting process. Category 1: skilled craftsmen, blacksmiths, engineers, weapon makers, relocated to Mongolia for industrial production. Category 2: common population, executed immediately, every person, including children. Category 3: noble and educated women, ages 12 to 40, literate, from wealthy families. Special protocols applied. Let me repeat that. While commoners were killed, noblewomen were specifically preserved. Why? Archaeological excavations at Nishapur between 1930 and 2004 revealed the answer in layers of mass graves. The execution pits contain men, elderly women, and young children. Common people killed without discrimination. But separate sites located 3 miles outside the city show something different. Temporary camps, evidence of extended occupation, feeding areas for hundreds of people, and specific artifacts, high-quality Persian textiles, jewelry, literacy tools. These weren't prisoner of war camps. They were processing centers. Noblewomen weren't killed. They were collected. Now we need to understand the scale of this operation. Between 1220 and 1258, Mongol armies conquered every major Persian city. Nishapur, 1221. Herat, 1221. Merv, 1221. Ray, 1221. Ray, 1221. Ray, 1221. Baghdad, 1258. Each conquest followed the same pattern: total destruction, mass execution, but systematic preservation of educated women. Persian historian Uveni, writing in the 1250s, recorded the Mongol administrative process. He had access to Mongol records because he worked for them as a bureaucrat. His chronicles describe the separation of quality bloodlines and relocation for imperial purpose. What does that mean? DNA evidence from modern populations provides the answer. Genetic studies published between 2003 and 2015 analyzed Y chromosome and mitochondrial DNA across Central Asia, Persia, and Mongolia. The findings are staggering. Approximately 8% of men in the former Mongol Empire territory carry genetic markers traceable to a common male ancestor from around 1200 AD. That's roughly 16 million living descendants. The most likely source, Genghis Khan and his male relatives. But here's what's even more revealing. Maternal DNA tells a different story. Mitochondrial DNA passed through mothers shows massive Persian, Khwarezmian, and Central Asian lineages appearing in Mongolian and Chinese populations starting around 1220 to 1240. This wasn't migration. This was forced relocation and systematic reproduction. The Mongols moved Persian noblewomen thousands of miles from their homes, to Mongolia, to China, to administrative centers across the empire, and then implemented a breeding program designed to create a new class of administrators, children with Mongol fathers and Persian mothers. The question is, why Persian noblewomen? The Mongols conquered dozens of civilizations. Why systematically preserve and relocate Persian women above others? The answer lies in what Persia represented in the 13th century. The Islamic Golden Age had produced the world's most sophisticated administrative culture. Persian bureaucrats ran empires from Spain to India. They had advanced literacy and multilingualism, mathematical and astronomical knowledge, legal and administrative training, diplomatic skills, record-keeping systems. The Mongols were the greatest military force in history, but they had almost no administrative infrastructure. They could conquer empires, they couldn't run them. So, they built a solution. Create a hybrid administrative class. Take Persian noble women educated, literate, from families with bureaucratic traditions. Force them to bear children with Mongol fathers, raised as children in a controlled environment where they learn both cultures. The result, administrators who are Mongol by blood, Persian by training, and loyal to the empire because they belong to neither culture fully. It was genetic engineering before the term existed, and the archaeological evidence from the re-education centers shows exactly how they did it. Karakorum, the Mongol capital. Built in 1235, when Franciscan friar William of Rubruck visited in 1254, he described something that confused him. Separate quarters where Persian women dwell, their children instructed in both tongues, prevented from contact with common Mongols or Persians alike. He thought these were harems. He was wrong. These were breeding and training facilities. Archaeological excavations at Karakorum between 1948 and 2000 uncovered the remains of these quarters. The layout is revealing. Outer walls, high, fortified, guarded. Interior divisions, separate compounds for different groups. Central buildings, teaching facilities with evidence of multiple languages. Residential areas designed for mothers with children, not individual women. Analysis of the site shows capacity for approximately 2,000 women and their children. Continuous occupation from 1235 to 1368. Evidence of Persian, Chinese, and Mongol material culture mixed together. Educational materials in multiple scripts, but here's the disturbing detail. Skeletal remains of children from these sites show specific patterns. Growth markers indicate controlled nutrition. Some children received better food than others. The selection wasn't random, it was based on demonstrated aptitude. Children who excelled in languages, mathematics, or administrative training received better nutrition and care. Those who didn't were malnourished, stunted, often died young. The Mongols were selectively breeding for intelligence and administrative capability. Now let's reconstruct what life was like inside these facilities. Based on Giovanni's chronicles, Rubruck's observations, Chinese administrative records, and archaeological evidence, we can piece together the system. Phase 1, Arrival and Breaking. First 6 months, captured Persian noblewomen arrived at facilities in groups of 50 to 100. They were separated from any companions from their home cities, assigned to residential compounds with women from different regions, forbidden to speak Persian except during designated hours, required to learn basic Mongolian immediately, branded with marks indicating their origin and assignment. The purpose: destroy old identity, prevent organization, create dependency. Phase 2, reproduction. Ongoing. Women of childbearing age were assigned to Mongol officers, administrators, or nobles based on a calculated system, the highest-ranking women to highest-ranking Mongols. Literacy and education to administrators who needed educated wives. Specific skills: medicine, astronomy to specialized placements. This wasn't random sexual violence, it was strategic matching. Chinese records from the Yuan dynasty describe marriage assignments with the same bureaucratic precision used for military logistics. And here's the key: once a woman bore a child, her status changed. She became a mother of the empire. Her treatment improved. Her child's future depended on her cooperation. Phase 3, child rearing and selection. Ages 0 to 15. Children born in these facilities were raised communally. Archaeological evidence shows separate dormitories for children from ages 5 onwards, educational facilities with multilingual instruction, ranking systems based on performance, different nutrition levels based on aptitude. By age 15, children were tested and assigned roles. Highest performers to administrative training for imperial service. Military aptitude to officer training programs. Average to lower bureaucratic positions. Failures to menial labor or execution. The system was ruthlessly meritocratic within its horrifying framework. Now we need to talk about what DNA analysis reveals about this system. A 23 study published in the American Journal of Human Genetics analyzed Y chromosome data from populations across Asia. The findings: approximately 8% of males in the former Mongol Empire territory share a common Y chromosomal lineage dating to approximately 1,000 years ago. That's roughly 16 million living descendants of one male lineage. The most likely explanation: Genghis Khan and his male relatives produced an extraordinary number of offspring through systematic reproduction with captured women. But mitochondrial DNA inherited through mothers tells the other side of the story. A 2015 study examined meat DNA from populations across the former empire and found significant Persian maternal lineages and Mongolian populations appearing around 1250, Chinese maternal lineages in Central Asian populations, same period. Central Asian maternal lineages in Chinese populations, same period. This wasn't natural migration. The timing is too precise, the dispersal too systematic. This was forced relocation and reproduction operating at an imperial scale. Foredone Mongolians carry genetic markers from Persian women who were transported there 800 years ago. Modern Iranians carry genetic markers from Mongol men who conquered their ancestors. The Mongol breeding program left a genetic signature that persists in millions of living people today. But here's where the system's purpose becomes clear. The second generation, children born to Persian mothers and Mongol fathers, became the backbone of the Yuan dynasty's administration in China and the Ilkhanids' administration in Persia. Persian sources from the 1260s, 1280s describe a new class of officials, men of mixed blood, speaking both tongues, belonging to neither people fully, serving only the Khan. These weren't just translators. They were governors, tax collectors, legal administrators, engineers. They had Mongol names, Persian education, and Chinese administrative roles. The Mongol Empire couldn't function without them, and they couldn't exist outside the empire. They were engineered for purpose. Chinese census records from 1290 show a distinct demographic category: mixed households of Persian-Mongol descent. Over 200,000 such households listed. That's potentially 1 million people deliberately created through this system. 1 million people who existed because of systematic sexual violence turned into imperial policy. Now we return to Nishapur, where this all began. Modern archaeological excavations reveal the full scope of what happened in April 1221. Excavation Site 1, Mass Execution Pit, contains approximately 10,000 bodies. Men, women, children. killed rapidly, buried without ceremony. Excavation Site 2, the selection grounds, located half a mile from the execution pits, contains evidence of temporary structures, feeding areas, and something deeply disturbing: children's graves. Specifically, graves of infants and toddlers buried separately from the mass execution site. Forensic analysis shows these children died over a period of weeks or months, not during the massacre. They died from malnutrition, disease, and neglect after the city fell. Why? Because they were children of common women who were being held during the selection process. The Mongols kept the mothers alive long enough to determine their value. The children were collateral, fed minimally, treated as disposable. When mothers were selected for relocation, their existing children were killed. The Mongols wanted wombs, not families. Excavation Site 3, the quality holding area, contains remains of temporary buildings, evidence of better food quality, Persian luxury goods, and no mass graves. This is where noblewomen were held, fed, kept alive, processed for relocation. The archaeological layers tell a clear story: systematic sorting, deliberate preservation of valuable captives, elimination of everyone else. Tracking the relocation routes requires combining multiple sources: Mongol postal station records, Chinese administrative documents, Persian chronicles, and modern archaeological surveys. The evidence shows established routes. Route 1, Persia to Mongolia. Distance, approximately 3,500 miles. Duration, 4 to 6 months on foot. Way stations every 30 to 40 miles. Route 2, Persia to China. Distance, approximately 4,000 miles. Duration, 6 to 8 months. Through the Silk Road infrastructure. Archaeological surveys of Mongol postal stations along these routes have uncovered evidence of the transport system. Large holding facilities at stations. Evidence of female occupancy, jewelry, textile fragments, domestic items. Skeletal remains showing death during transport. Mortality rates were high. Perhaps 30–40% of relocated women died en route, but the Mongols compensated by sheer volume. If you relocate 10,000 women and 6,000 survive, that's still 6,000 wombs for the program. The system's brutality was factored into its logistics. So what happened to the women who survived? Some became mothers of administrators who helped run the largest land empire in history. Some died in the re-education facilities their children raised by others. Some lived to old age in a land thousands of miles from their birthplace, speaking a language they learned as captives, raising children who belonged to neither their culture nor their captors. And their descendants, they're alive today. Millions of them. Every modern Mongolian with Persian genetic markers carries this legacy. Every modern Iranian with Mongol genetic markers carries this legacy. The Mongol breeding program was so successful that it altered the genetic makeup of entire populations permanently. This wasn't just conquest. This was biological imperialism. Why does this matter now? Because the systematic use of sexual violence as a tool of ethnic engineering didn't end with the Mongols. The Ottoman Devshirme system used similar logic. European colonial breeding programs in the Americas. Japanese comfort women's systems in World War II. Systematic rape in Rwanda, Bosnia, and Bangladesh. The specifics change. The logic remains: destroy one population, create another. Use women's bodies as the mechanism. The Mongols just did it most successfully. Stand in Nishapur today. The city was rebuilt. Population around 200,000 now. But beneath the modern city, the mass graves remain. The execution pits, the selection grounds, the children's graves. And across Central Asia, Mongolia, China, and Persia, tens of millions of people carry genetic evidence of what happened between 1220 and 1260, a breeding program that turned captured Persian noblewomen into the raw material for building an empire. Systematic, documented, effective. This is what they don't teach you in school, not because it's too graphic, but because it reveals what empire building actually requires. The deliberate destruction of some humans to create others who serve imperial purpose. The The Mongols understood that conquest isn't complete when you take territory. It's complete when you erase the conquered population and replace it with something new, something designed to serve, something that can't exist outside the empire. Subscribe if you believe these mechanisms need to be exposed. Leave a comment. How do we process historical horror that left biological traces in millions of living people? Because the question isn't just what the Mongols did to Persian noblewomen, it's how that systematic violence became so normalized that it operated as official imperial policy for 40 years. How did genetic engineering become bureaucracy? And why do the same patterns keep appearing throughout history?